Trans rights are human rights. That one statement is often enough to either rally or piss off most people, including Malaysians. Almost everyone has an opinion on trans people, their lives and existence, whether or not they should be allowed to be themselves, what they should and shouldn't do, and what they say, do, and think. Governments and societies have been debating their existence for a really long time.
Men pose as a women.
You mean transgender people?
Oh, yes, not transgender.
Okay.
So
what do you do?
We got to prevent that kind of bad behavior.
Saya terpaksa dilayan dengan teruk, dipukul, dijatuh, digari. Dengan saya telah memberi kerjasama, mereka buat sebegitu.
I was arrested by the Religious Department. I was sexually abused, verbally abused. I was falsely asked to do sexual activities towards other men in there.
And we're quick to form opinions on their lives, often with little to no empathy, understanding, or knowledge of even the most basic things about them. So in the spirit of growth and not being selectively or casually ignorant, let's take the effort to understand more about trans people today. A trans person is someone who doesn't identify with the gender they were assigned to at birth. So trans men are people who were assigned female at birth, but they identify as male, while trans women are people who were assigned male at birth, but they identify as female. The American Psychological Association defines sex as biological and physiological characteristics such as chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive organs. The World Health Organization defines gender identity as a person's deeply felt internal and individual experiences of gender, which may not correspond to the person's physiology or designated sex at birth. While sexual orientation is a person's emotional, romantic, and sexual attraction to another person. Gender, on the other hand, is defined as a societal construct that deals with expected roles, behaviors, and activities typically associated with different sexes. So here's the thing, gender roles can vary across cultures and time, influencing people's behaviors, choices, and how they feel about themselves. For example, most behaviors that we take for granted among women today, like let's say wearing pants, keeping your hair short, going out without a male escort, getting a job, voting, would have been considered gender non-conforming just like maybe 100 years ago. This is just one example of how what we consider to be gender and its roles are society-driven rather than genetics-driven. So basically, gender is a spectrum, right? And it means different things to different people. So if you're unsure about things like, let's say, pronouns, the most common being he, she, and they, you can just ask people politely. And if they're comfortable sharing, they will tell you. We also have to take into account that choosing to express different gender identities, especially when it isn't the same as the one you were assigned to at birth, is still criminalized in most parts of the world. So it may not even be a safe space for people to say these things aloud. So what we can do is be respectful of others, their boundaries, and be conscious of our surroundings. No. Drag queens are typically people who are biologically male who dress as women for the purpose of entertainment. They usually dress in exaggerated women's clothing and makeup to assume female societal roles and presentation. So a trans person can be a drag queen, but not all drag queens are trans people. Being trans is not like playing dress up, or it's not the same as cross-dressing. It's a permanent gender identity. In 2019, the World Health Organization said that transgender will no longer be classified as mental and behavioral disorders, correcting its earlier stance, calling it an outdated diagnosis.
It was taken out from mental health disorders because we had better understanding that this wasn't actually a mental health condition, and leaving it there was causing stigma. So in order to reduce the stigma while also ensuring access to necessary health interventions, this was placed to a different chapter, the sexual health chapter in the new ICD.
So the only cure for this is for laws and policies to be non-discriminatory and inclusive of all gender identities. yes, they would like to freely, without any persecution or discrimination, choose to live with the gender identities they identify with. They're born that way. Why would people, go through all the challenges, discrimination, pain and hatred and anger from communities and governments, just like for fun? Transitioning refers to the process of changing the way you look and how people see and treat you so it matches the gender you feel on the inside. So there's social, medical and legal transitioning. You know how people say happiness is not a destination, it's a journey. Yeah, they say transitioning is a bit like that.
Every trans person's full transition is different.
You don't need to look like me, you don't need to look like you.
Social transitioning could mean coming out to your friends, family, and the people around you as trans. It could also extend to changing your name, asking people to use the pronouns that match your gender identity, and the way you dress. And it's not limited to this, of course. It's often different from one person to another. Medical transitioning is when a person undergoes medical treatments to change their gender expression and/or physical appearance through hormones and/or surgeries to match their gender identity. So for example, medical transitioning for trans men could be hormone therapy to create masculine characteristics such as deeper voice, facial hair, and not getting periods. As for surgery, it could be male chest reconstruction, also known as top surgery to remove breast and breast tissue, or hysterectomy to remove female reproductive organs like uterus and ovaries, and phalloplasty, the construction of a penis using skin from other parts of your body. As for trans women, it could be, but not limited to, hormone therapy to create feminine characteristics such as growth of breasts and less body hair. Surgeries could be breast implants, removal of testes, facial feminization to create more traditionally feminine features, and penile inversion vaginoplasty, where a vagina is created by inverting penile skin. So in Malaysia, hormone replacement therapy can cost around 50 ringgit a month if it is self-administered. And the surgeries are of course a lot more costly and can go up to thousands of ringgits with long recovery periods. Legal transitioning involves changing one's name and/or gender marker on legal documents such as driver's license, ID and birth certificates. So not all trans people transition. Some just choose to do it socially, while others would do it medically and legally too if they can and want to. So at the end of the day, there's no one path or way to transition, and people choose what they want or can afford to do, often because of inaccessibility to treatments, criminalization and discrimination of trans and gender non-conforming people. In February 2017, florist Samira Krishnan was found brutally murdered in Kuantan, Pahang. The trans woman was shot and mutilated with slash wounds on her arms, hands, legs and head. Violence, aggression and widespread discrimination against trans people happens all too often in Malaysia.
Let me tell you one thing, highly educated. But when I go and ask in the hospital work for me, the man asked me to work. Then he saw my identity card. He said my return is I'm a man.
He wanted you to dress as a man before he gave you a job, and you said no.
I can't because I've been this life when I was younger, 8 years old.
In its Suhakam study on discrimination against trans people in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor, 57% of trans women who were interviewed said that they had experienced discrimination when it came to basic necessities like housing, employment, education and healthcare because their gender appearance does not match the gender on their identity card. A trans man I spoke to said that not being able to change his name and gender marker legally has made his daily life quite difficult. And then I was speaking to a friend recently and she talked about just how difficult it is to get a job as a trans woman in Malaysia. She's actually a professional in the beauty industry and has like more than 20 years worth of experience. But the beauty sector is the last one to open after all the MCOs, so she just needed something, anything to make ends meet. And no one wanted to give her a job. Most people turned her down, uncomfortable at the fact that she's a trans woman. And when she finally did find a job, she was amazed that the employers and other employees didn't make fun of her or bully her. The thing is, this situation isn't exclusive to the pandemic now. This is common. Trans people always find it hard to get a job because people don't want to give them jobs. This amazing, brilliant woman was just laughing and casually talking about a lifetime worth of discrimination and bullying. Her norm is pain, kindness the exception. Silently suffering, marginalized and pushed aside. On that note, stop calling people pondan.
Long Tiger bersama 3 rakan subahatnya termasuk seorang pondan direman 4 hari di Mahkamah Magistrate Tangkak, Johor pagi tadi.
It's a slur like calling Chinese people Cina babi, Indians keling or people jakun. It's mean and rude. Please don't be mean and rude. Be nice and polite. If you cannot, shut up, shut up, shut up. And another friend said that finding housing can be really difficult too. Most agents and landlords don't want to rent their spaces to trans people, walaupun that's discriminatory. So not only do they not want Indians and Africans, they also don't want trans people. And usage of public toilets is also very challenging for many trans people. It can be particularly difficult when their gender expression and appearance does not match with the gender they identify with, leaving them open to feeling unsafe and verbal, physical and sexual harassment and violence. Good news is countries like Japan, Thailand, Canada, India and Nepal have started introducing and increasing the number of gender-neutral toilets in public spaces. And come Malaysia, I see a lot of the restaurants, cafes and bars pun ada gender-neutral toilets. Allowing trans people to choose and change their gender on their legal documents to match with the gender they identify with is what some countries have done to ensure that all their citizens are treated equally and trans people are protected. So last year, the Netherlands decided to phase out gender markers on their national IDs so that citizens can shape their own identity and propagate it in complete freedom and security. And countries like Australia, Argentina and Canada allow their citizens to choose an X gender marker instead of male or female. In Ireland and Argentina, anyone above the age of 18 can choose their gender identity, undergo gender reassignment surgery, and revise official documents without any prior judicial or medical approval. Do not ask sensitive questions unless they want to share it with you willingly. Do ask for their pronouns and use it correctly. Please don't misgender them. Do not disclose a trans person's identity without their consent. It's both disrespectful and can be dangerous for them. Please don't date name them. Date naming is calling or referring to someone by the name they no longer use, which is usually their birth name from before their transition. Don't force anyone to come out. Respect them as fellow humans. I mean, we gotta treat others the way we want to be treated, right? Educate yourself and others if you can on trans rights, lives and issues. Just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it's not real or can't coexist peacefully in the same space. If you happen to see or hear transphobic comments or behavior, please stand up for trans people. Be an ally, have empathy, be kind and not cruel. I mean, it's a little like standing up for other marginalized and discriminated people and causes. It doesn't always have to be a big show on social media, but it can and should start at home, within your own communities and circle. You know, the people most likely to listen and hear you out. Try and increase awareness whenever and wherever you can. I'm not asking anybody to, believe in the same things I do. I'm only respectfully, humbly asking for us to always remember that trans people are people. They deserve the same equal opportunities and the right to live their lives with dignity and respect, just like the rest of us.